Like most super macho manly straight boys, I was a big fan of Powerpuff Girls back when it first aired. I hadn't watched the reboot or Powerpuff Girls Z, the anime, but with all the cartoons I watch currently on hiatus and me desperately in need of new video ideas, I thought I would give them both a watch and talk about which one was the worst adaptation of the original classic. Powerpuff Girls Z is an anime adaptation of the show that aired in Japan and never made it to America despite getting an English dub for other territories, with the Powerpuff Girls reboot being a recent recreation of the first series for an American audience with virtually no involvement from the original creator or the crew involved, not even the voice actors for some reason. So, which one was worse? In my admittedly limited experience, Japanese anime tends to be more serious than its American counterparts, particularly back in the 90s where American cartoons were pretty silly when it wasn't airing on a Saturday morning block. With that in mind, I expected Powerpuff Girls Z to be a more grounded approach to the original story elements, something more closely resembling the Powerpuff Girls movie than the actual show, but if anything, it's even crazier than the original. The show opens with Professor Utonium and some kid who I hope is his son, though he only refers to him as Professor. They're eating some snacks dangerously close to a vat of Chemical X when their robot dog accidentally knocks some into it. Instead of it creating the Powerpuff Girls, it just turns the Chemical X to Chemical Z, hence why the show is called Powerpuff Girls Z. See what they did there? Anyways, for no reason at all, the entire world is facing extreme weather patterns, including an iceberg suddenly appearing in the middle of the city. So Ken, against the professor's wishes, launches some Chemical Z at it, which makes it explode and launches Chemical Z throughout the city. The white Z-beams hit 3 8th grade girls, Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup in their different parts of town. In this episode, we only see the black Z-beams hit Mojo Jojo, who was a monkey at the zoo at the time, turning him into what he is, but it's revealed throughout the show that it hit a bunch of other people who become villains, both familiar ones like Fuzzy Lumpkins and the Gangrene Gang, and new ones exclusive to the anime that I don't care enough about to learn the names of. When hit by a Z-beam, the girls each suddenly get magic powers. Whatever they're touching becomes a magic weapon, and for some reason it changes their outfits as well. Blossom gets into a fight with Mojo Jojo, and when the mayor tries to thank her, she runs away. Despite literally just running away, in the next scene she is now trapped in the mayor's van as she gets kidnapped by him and the professor to do lab experiments on, which is weird, but... yeah, no, it's just weird. This was kinda creepy, I'm not gonna lie. Along the way, they find Bubbles and take her to the lab too, where they perform lab experiments that make the girls turn back to normal, but leaves them with these mechanical belts. When the robot dog says, "Powerpuff Girls, we need you," the girls magically/scientifically transform into the Powerpuff Girls for some reason. This pleases the girls because they want to be superheroes, again, for some reason. Later, they randomly run into Buttercup, and she doesn't want to be a superhero, but the mayor begs her to change her mind because Townsville will crumble without them, yet again, for some reason. There's been no real threat shown to the town other than the weather so far. There's no real reason he needs these girls to step up and become superheroes. Either way, Buttercup changes her mind after flying around for a minute because exercise calms her down, she says. Whatever. The girls are a team now, they can magically transform thanks to a talking robot dog, and they want to fight villains for some reason. They try to explain this after the fact by revealing that Blossom is a big comic book nerd who loves superhero stuff, but up until that moment, her entire personality revolves around cute boys and food, particularly candy and junk food. A very real feminist change to her boring old American character who was known for just, you know, like using her brain like some anti-feminist cliche. Anyways, Bubbles and Buttercup are mostly the same as their American counterparts, maybe a bit more refined, with Bubbles being into fashion instead of just things for little girls, and Buttercup really leaning into the tomboy shtick with sports, which really just means she hates skirts, and she spends the entire episode talking about how much she hates that her outfit gives her a skirt. The mayor pulls some strings, and the girls end up in the same class the next day. During lunch, the city is under attack, and they have to leave their food behind to stop Mojo Jojo, who is causing some trouble at the docks. After destroying the crane he was randomly using, he gets into a boat and now has missiles. Seriously, none of this is even explained. The girls shoot the missiles back at him and return to school in time to eat lunch. I didn't watch much more of the series, but did do a little bit of research and did look at the highlights of important episodes. It does have a bit of an interesting take on the original story by revealing that the villain, him, is actually the devil himself, intent on turning the world into a fiery hexscape. Because that's what devils like. They like fire. He was thwarted a couple hundred years ago by the Good Enough Girls, some ancient Japanese version of the Powerpuff Girls created by Professor Utonium's great-great-grandfather or something, using Chemical X. The show ends with him making the volcano the town is built next to go off and seemingly succeeding at his plan, and so the girls put some giant ice cubes in his shirt, causing him to return to his slumber because devils like fire, not ice. I'm not making this up, this is seriously what happens. Then the girls lose their powers for some reason, something about using it to lock him up again or something, and that's the end of the show. Most anime for real small kids will lean into not so serious approaches to storytelling, but most will have a surprisingly dark and serious finale to wrap things up. But wow, this show didn't even try. The big emotional arc for these girls is giving up these powers they randomly received, with some flashes showing how they hope to become wrestlers or get married but still have their superhero powers to use on the side. Oh, also along the way the girls get into giant robots that look like them, and yes, they do combine into an even bigger robot that looks like Blossom. This show is the epitome of Japanese anime from its time, embracing every cliché to such an absurd degree that it honestly feels like they could air an episode of this in America, and people would think it was just a parody episode of the original series poking fun at the Japanese animation. It is so ADD with its approach to storytelling that it's hard to believe they tried taking any elements of the show seriously. In the American show, they pretty much dismiss the origins of their characters in favor of fun plots being explored in each episode, with the girls being superheroes just as a silly premise to frame the stories in. The movie was more dramatic by tying in Mojo Jojo's backstory with the girls' own creation, showing that the girls were initially just trying to be normal kids and having them kicked out of town and the Earth for not having a good control of their powers. They learn to use their powers for good, they defeat Mojo Jojo, and really earn their spot as heroes of Townsville. It had twice the amount of time to tell this story as the two-part premiere to Powerpuff Girls Z, but it just felt like the anime could have done more to make the parts of its story that it pretended to take seriously actually good. Is it any worse than the American Reboot though? Well, when I first started planning this video, I thought I was going to be the arbitrary guy who says that the reboot is actually kind of good, since most people seem to hate it. I mean, Powerpuff Girls is a solid premise, and it didn't take itself too seriously, so how can a show that is not trying to be radically different like the anime do too bad? But after watching 75% of the first 2 episodes, I get why people hate it. There is a reason people are tired of these Cartoon Network reboots of original properties. The cartoons of the network from the 90s and early 2000s all had their own very distinct brands of comedy, ones that would generally tie into the actual plot and situations that the characters face. These plots wouldn't be serious, but they were where the comedy stemmed from. This reboot, like the Teen Titans Go reboot, is just a vehicle used to transport the same generic brand of humor that all the shows without serious plot elements seem to be leaning into these days. There is one scene, for instance, in the first episode where they're in the middle of an island trying to find the mayor, and the girls just start a rap battle, randomly getting the clothes to match, in order to see who can get Bubbles' spare ticket to a rock concert. And that's another thing, the plot of these 2 episodes I did see were really weird. After the tickets episode, there was one about Buttercup joining an extreme skate group. The original series was varied, but episodes that didn't focus particularly on a villain and their plan would focus on the girls experiencing something actual little girls did, like wanting to stay up late, or not wanting to take a bath, or games of imagination. Silly things for kids, but real stuff that kids did experience. And these new plots are just the first 2 episodes. I have no idea what kind of crazy, weird stuff they bring in for later episodes. They didn't do anything to introduce us to the characters of the world, the premise of the story, or any of the basics. It just opens up with the girls trying to win tickets to a concert and getting a call from the mayor that a plane he is piloting is crashing into Monster Island. People who watch this show for the first time shouldn't even know who the mayor is. The second episode makes even less sense. We're supposed to just know who this Morbucks girl is based off of the original series, but kids these days haven't seen the original series, and her plan didn't even make sense. She pays the skater girls to distract Buttercup so that she can become a Powerpuff Girl in her place, but as soon as she does get in her place, she just puts the girls in a trap and then declares herself the only Powerpuff Girl. Why did she need to distract Buttercup for that? Ultimately, I found this reboot to be really disappointing. I can't even play devil's advocate here just for the sake of sounding different than all the people who hate on the new show. As crazy as Powerpuff Girls Z was, it was at least something new, and it at least embraced its own particular style. It knew what it wanted to be, its own thing, and it succeeded. At least, that was my take, but what do you guys think? Have you seen the anime? The reboot? Did you like both? Either? Neither? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.